Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Getting Innovation Fit with the Spigit Strategy and Solutions team. I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Paul Brook, Chief Customer Officer.
Hey, thank you, Hannah, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome, and many thanks for taking the time to join us today for our Innovation Fit webinar. As Hannah mentioned, my name is Paul Brook, and I'm responsible for all things customer success here at Spigit, and I'm super excited to be joined today by members of our Spigit strategy team, as well as Doug Collins, who is our Chief Solution Architect here at Spigit. So I'm sure that there's several folks out there who are probably wondering what an Innovation Fit webinar is when it's at home, so let me provide a little insight. So as we sat down to think of best practices that we could share and ways we could help our customers kickstart your programs in 2018, we thought that this was a little like how as individuals we start to look forward to the new year in terms of starting off or kicking off a new fitness regimen. So hence the fit reference. So our strategy team will be sharing with you a number of capabilities that could be a good fit and benefit to your program as you look forward to 2018. And we hope that one or two of these examples will strike a chord with some of our customers. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the session. But I also wanted to mention that if anything that we review today does interest folks, to please reach out to either myself, any of our strategy team, or your customer success lead, and we'll be more than happy to schedule a follow-up session. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by introducing Mr. Danny Flynn, all the way from sunny San Diego, who's going to kick us off and walk us through some great innovation fitness best practices. So Danny, if you're ready, we'll hand over to you.
All set, Paul. Thank you very much, and hey, everybody. So today I've selected the Program Accelerator of Scale, and I'll be sharing with you some examples for you to consider as you get innovation fit for 2018 and look to scale your own program. First, I want to start by just explaining what scale means to me. And so my definition is to progress, climb, or ascend in some kind of graduated series. And I think as we look at our ideation, our innovation, our Spigit programs, at a baseline, to scale is to reach and engage more people, to grow our crowd. Hopefully by broadening our crowd, we can broaden our diversity, which in turn will lead to more ideas, more fruitful connections amongst our audience, and ideally will produce more value in the form of implemented ideas and actionable insights. So if we think about this in fitness terms, I like to equate it to working out with friends, working out with peers, partners, and groups. And there's several clearly documented benefits to why you might want to do this. First off, motivation. You're actually more likely to stick to your fitness regime when you work out with a partner. It drives accountability. It drives the good kind of peer pressure, which is a great thing to try to advance. Second, workouts are reportedly more fun, more enjoyable when you work out with a peer, a partner, or a friend. And we all know fitness can get tough sometimes, so anything we can do to make it a more pleasant experience is obviously for the good. And then lastly, it's been reported that when you work out with friends and peers, you actually push yourself further than when you work out alone. You run that extra lap, you lift that extra weight, you challenge yourself just a little bit more. Now, all these things are obviously great things to strive for in fitness, but also great things to incorporate into our innovation programs as we look to scale in 2018. I'd like to share with you one example now of a Spigit client that recently looked to scale and really work out with a lot of their own peers and partners internally. This is a large multinational technology company, and every year they run an innovation week. It's open company-wide to all employees. In this most recent year, they had a goal that during this innovation week, they wanted to launch 100 plus challenges to over 100 unique teams during this concentrated period. Pretty lofty, ambitious goal in and of itself, but especially when you consider the core team to support these 100 plus groups was only about 2.5 FTEs. So they had very limited bandwidth, very limited capacity to develop and manage all these challenges. So they looked to Spigit for a few solutions to help with the scale. And there were two things primarily that they used. First is a challenge deployment toolkit, and second is the launch portal, which I'll show you now in a bit more detail. Now there's three main elements to a challenge deployment toolkit, and I'll start on the left. First, establishing a playing field. Oftentimes when you look to scale, standardization is going to be your friend. So this team set one challenge during this innovation week that every single team was going to follow. They set the stages, the activities, the phases. They buttoned all that up very tightly. Once they had their standard, they moved on to that second step. They built an intake form. They were able to keep it very simple, under one page, and they asked for one representative from each of the participating teams to submit this form to the core team. This info was all the info that the core team needed to actually build and deploy challenges for each of the teams. And then the third component, very important, they're launching this huge scale of challenges, this high volume, high quantity. How do they do that to where they don't sacrifice quality in the process? And so what they added was a one-to-many training portal within their Spigit instance to help to transfer the best practices, the coaching tips that these teams needed to be successful. And so if we look at it, it's just built directly in the Spigit environment, and you'll see a screenshot pop up here in a second. Step one is essentially framing the challenge question, right? How do you ask a good question? What does a good question look like? What sort of info do you need to include so that your audience can effectively contribute? What sort of info should you include so that you get everybody's attention and inspire them? Walks the teams through this, and then when they're ready, they move on to step two. Who do you need on your extended challenge team to be successful, right? We all know you're going to want somebody managing communications. You're going to want a moderator. What does a moderator do? What functions do they have access to in Spigit? How do we train them? We're going to want an expert reviewer. What makes a good expert reviewer? How do we recruit them? How do we train them? So it walks the teams through this, and then when they're ready, they move on to steps 3 and 4. Planning effective communications, right? Very important. Planning effective rewards. How do you actually motivate your audience to contribute, get the most thoughtful, effective collaboration during these Innovation Week challenges? So they built all this in to their overall plan. At the end of the day, just to wrap up the story of this client, they ended up launching, the final tally was 116 challenges during this Innovation Week. From these 116 challenges, they engaged literally tens of thousands of employees, generated thousands of ideas, and we can't share the final figures, but we did report back that they generated over $100 million, in qualified opportunity pipeline, just as a result of these Innovation Week challenges. So a really, really good story all around, and hopefully some inspiration for you to scale in 2018. Now, taking this one step further, this specific client didn't use this, but we're starting to see more and more adoption from other Spigit clients of this capability, our challenge request portal. Now, one other way to engage your audience to scale to more people is to open up the ability to launch and or suggest challenges to anyone within your organization. And so to do this is actually quite simple. First, determine the parameters, the base level of information that you as the core innovation, you as the core Spigit program team needs to validate, prioritize, and ultimately approve challenges to be included in your challenge pipeline. Once you have this information, you can begin to advertise the ability for your own teams, your own audiences and departments to run their own challenges. And sometimes this is as simple as on the screenshot on the left, on your program landing page on Spigit, or on a challenge landing page. Add a small button or banner that just says, hey, you want to run your own challenge? Click here and submit your challenge request. When one of your employees clicks that, it's going to open up a modified Spigit post idea form that includes things such as, who's your executive sponsor? What's the topic that you plan to launch? What are your business priorities? What's your timing? All the info that your core program team needs to decide, hey, this is a challenge that we do want to move forward with, it's ready to go, and here's where we'll fit it in our challenge pipeline. So just another great option I wanted to share with you as you look to get more scale in the coming year. And so in closing, beyond just leaving you with this great 80s workout picture here, I just wanted to remind you that if you're looking to engage more employees and to engage more motivated employees who actually enjoy participating and collaborating in your challenges, that are going to push their colleagues and their colleagues' ideas to be better, then definitely look to work out with more friends, colleagues, and peers in the coming year in 2018. I'm going to now turn over to Bill Trutner, and he's going to talk to you about our accelerator of Implement.
Thanks, Danny. Bill Trutner, also coming to you from California. Carrying our fitness theme forward, it's very trendy now to hire personal trainers. And so I thought we'd take a look at what is it that personal trainers do that's so effective in terms of performance, and how can we apply that to the world of ideation and innovation? And focusing on 3 areas, which really are some of the keys to achieving the goals, achieving the innovation outcomes that we're all driving toward. First is commit to a plan. In the case of a fitness routine or a personal trainer, many times you sit down with the trainer at the start of your engagement and put a plan together, and it's the individual committing to a plan. For those of us working in organizations to drive ideas forward, that commitment probably comes in the form of a sponsor who can put some resources behind the ideas. So we'll talk about committing to a plan. Secondarily, test and learn. So this is the whole concept of rapid prototyping. It's great to have a plan, but every plan is going to change as you work through implementation. So we need to find fast ways to test and learn and optimize as we go. And then lastly, the whole concept of demonstrating progress. So the hard work of innovation is much like the hard work of personal fitness. You don't get there in a day, you don't get there in a week or even a month many times. And so it's important to find ways to demonstrate progress as we go. Next slide. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the concept of concept development. So coming out of online innovation challenges, often we are the owners of ideas that really, when you look at them, are fragments of ideas or beginning of concepts, early stage thoughts or notions that really, one of the most common comments we get back from across our customer base is sponsors who are looking at ideas and saying, yeah, the ideas look compelling. I can see the value here. Maybe it's a new growth opportunity, a new customer experience we want to drive, a new operational improvement or product or service. But they're having trouble translating that idea into an actual plan that they can make a good judgment as to whether they should assign resources or not. So we have a 4-step process that we can use to transform the idea into an opportunity statement, starting with accomplishing the deep understanding of what is the situation around the idea, where did the idea come from, and why is it particularly relevant and meaningful at this time. And then expanding on the improvement that we want to drive and thinking more about how we would actually construct the improvement and what success would look like. Thirdly, then putting a plan in place that de-risks and validates the idea so that we have a good idea of what it's going to take to implement it and how we can give it the best chance of succeeding. And then lastly, based on all those first 3 steps, develop an argument or a pitch, the opportunity statement, that can then be taken to a sponsor to shop the idea, if you will, for acceptance. If we go to the next slide, there's a good example here from a mid-sized pharmaceutical company who's wrestling with the challenge of how to make good new drug investment decisions. Getting a drug through approvals in the US, especially under the FDA, is not a trivial process. And they came up with an idea that, wouldn't it be great if we had an IT platform that would allow us to cohesively look at both the scientific data, the research data behind the idea, as well as the business side of the equation and what the market might be for that idea, what it takes to develop it, what sort of return we might expect. So great idea, really interesting, really compelling. Most people would look at that idea and say, yeah, that's something we should do, but not sure how to get there. If you've probably read through all the elements of an opportunity statement over on the right by this time, and hopefully you can imagine that having that idea transformed into that kind of an opportunity statement, it's much, much easier to make a good decision on whether to take it forward. Second method that may be useful to you. So one way to move more effectively and efficiently through implementation is taking ideas and turning them into opportunity statements. Another way is to take early stage ideas and just start moving through rapid prototypes. could take the form of a 3D printed object, for example, if you're looking at maybe a consumer packaged good, for example. I've also done these where the idea doesn't take a physical form, it takes an engineering diagram or a PowerPoint slide, something that you can articulate the idea and the concept in such a way that your target market or people who are going to be working on the idea can look at it and try to help you test the critical assumptions and, more importantly, surface the unknowns that are associated to that idea just by thinking it through. So this is really a case of how might this work? Let's put it into a prototype. Let's get it out there and get people looking at it. And the point is not to do one iteration and have a minimum viable product or a minimum viable operational improvement. The point is to iterate this rapid prototyping a couple of times till you get to a point where you're comfortable, you've learned enough, you've discovered all the unknowns, and you're ready to take it forward. So that the other dimension of this exercise that's worth thinking about is not only are you airing a concept and understanding how well it might work, you can also start to surface some implications around what is the development effort required of this? What is the investment required? What are the resources that we would need to put behind it? All of that is useful information as you begin to mature and develop the idea and start to conceive a plan around implementing the idea. And let's move to our third. This third item leverages the Spigit system in a very creative way, and it's something our customers are actually doing quite frequently now and finding it very useful. Many of you may have experienced that when you run online challenges, what you end up with is a set of ideas, and we narrow that down and we select the ideas that are going to move forward, and then we inform the audience which ideas are being pursued, turned into projects, and being implemented in the organization. A great way to continue the momentum and keep that conversation going with the audience, as well as provide a platform where we can build a portfolio of ideas that are turning into projects and then track those projects through over time, is to use the workflow mechanism in Spigit and set up stages and projects. So rather than having ideas go through the workflow that you're seeing here from bottom to top, we're actually moving projects through that same workflow, changing the labels on the stages to reflect the implementation stages. So in this case, just one example, we're moving up through 4 or 5 stages there. So we're now using the idea form as a project capture form, and we can capture text, numbers, dates, attachments. You can get a pretty robust view of an idea, a project here, what stages it's in, how long it's taken to go through those stages, what sorts of ROI or net present value you expect to achieve, some attachments that articulate the plan as it's coming together. Capturing that data and thinking about how you capture that data will be important, not just so people can look at the individual project, but so we can get an aggregated view. The third piece of putting together this implementation portfolio is setting up a search tab. So now you can decide how broadly you want to open up the portfolio, but when people have access, they can get in there and search by the stage, they can search by keyword, they can search by category, they can search by date. What you're doing now is socializing the improvements that are being worked on so that people can not only learn how improvements are being driven, but where they might engage for themselves and how decisions are being made, what the organization is deciding to work on. So this is not just a way to track projects in the innovation team, it's also a way for the community and the crowd to keep track of what's going on and move innovation through your organization in a more democratic form. And here's the fourth stage, which is now that we have all this data captured, we can build a dashboard, which is great for executive view and or full community view as you choose. Understand how many ideas and or projects, well, they'd be projects at this stage, what stages they're in, what sort of business impact we're accomplishing, how long it's taking, and then you can drill down into breakout reports from there. So that what you have at the end of putting those 4 pieces together, hopefully you can get a sense for a portfolio of projects being moved through the organization and a real visual way of displaying for whatever community you choose the progress that's being made. Next slide, please. So here's an example of one organization over the course of 2 years after putting in ID implementation portfolio on Spigit. They looked at, they ran 10 different challenges. Some of them were always on, some of them were timed. Roughly 15% of the ideas generated from those challenges were deemed worthy of further review. 51 of those ideas were actually implemented for a total of 1.5 million ROI based on third-party, if you will, treasury estimates, not based on the innovation team. So this is a mid-sized credit union that put this particular method into place, and we're really focusing on the value generated here, but I always like to stress that the learning, the alignment, the clarity that happens across your community by having this kind of a portfolio available is equally as important in terms of driving a culture of innovation and getting everyone involved in the process. All right, so using our fitness analogy, working on implementation, a couple of examples here on getting committed to a plan, learning, testing and learning as you go, and then putting up an implementation portfolio so that you can reach your innovation goals and or your fitness goals if you're practicing the same things in your personal life in 2018. And we look forward to helping you out with all of that. I'm going to hand over now to Maggie Riyad, who's going to talk about the Inspiration Accelerator.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, I'm Maggie Riyad. We're moving across the country now. I'm actually in the Midwest in Chicago. I am going to talk to you today about high-intensity interval training, which, if you're not familiar with this concept, is bursts of high intensity that you can insert while you're doing your regular exercise routine. And some of the benefits we've seen is you get improved capacity, improved metabolism, and you can burn more fat in less time. So if we're going to apply this concept of HIIT to your ideation program, we're basically trying to avoid the program going stale and participants getting bored. And what we do is we insert spurts of creativity. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 different ways we can do that. The first is trying new platform features. The second will be through inspirational workshops. And the third is using a design thinking methodology that we can apply to the Spigit platform. So let's start with trying new platform features. As you know, the platform is very robust with many features, but I would like to highlight today these 3 since I think they're probably the least known or least used. And again, feel free to speak with your customer success leader or any one of us on the call to learn more. So when we talk about a reputation score, this is a great way of adding a certain amount of gamification and a progress measure that each of your participants can see, grow over time. And it's basically tied to your participation across the entire community of challenges that you offer and how well you're linking to ideas that progress through your funnel. It's pretty simple, and once you turn the feature on, it will automatically show scores, and the scores will adjust based on our patented learning algorithm. The second feature I'd like to talk about today is our predictions module. This is also a patent algorithm that is offered in the platform, and when you turn it on, you can use a crowd to start estimating time, cost, and value of ideas. We've seen some clients start to use this, especially towards the later stages, once you've narrowed down your final set of ideas, and this can be one more data set in helping you either select the final ones or maybe prioritize them in a different way than just our pairwise feature does. This gives you a little more data around time, cost, and value. And then last but not least, in terms of new platform features, we have seen quite a bit of usage now of what we call our success stories page. And what this does is it allows you at your highest level landing page or your main landing page, you can start to consolidate up various wins, successes, either implementations or potentially progress. We also have folks that might highlight certain behaviors like collaboration or creative thinking, or whatever you would like to signal to your community. This is simply just an editable widget on a page at the landing page that allows folks to continue to come visit the site as often as possible and see the updates. Okay, so switching gears now, let's talk a little bit about inspirational workshops. We are starting to see our clients do interesting creative thinking exercises. So for example, we recently had a client run a health and wellness challenge, and they asked their employees to put themselves in the shoes of a highly acclaimed sports individual that they could relate to, maybe do a little bit of research on, and use their perspective to create a new idea. So rather than just thinking about what you and I might do on a regular basis, really stretch and think about a new lens or perspective, which what they felt brought bigger, better ideas to their challenge. The second example I have, we call a business assumption buster. We had an insurance company run a workshop with several of their employees to help them articulate and identify certain business assumptions they were making that could be hindering or limiting their creative thinking and the ideas that they were coming up with. Once they were able to articulate these assumptions, they could then turn them over, ignore them, or put them aside, and it opened up a whole new area of thinking for these employees. And then last but not least, we've done some executive alignment workshops where we've brought executives together to help think through what are the key problems that need to be solved and help build out a challenge pipeline that allows you to launch more challenges within your program. So just wanted to let you know that Spigit and most of the team on the call today, we could offer to help by either facilitating a workshop, or you could tap into some consulting hours where we might help you structure and let you know some details or best practices by which you could then launch these things on your own. The last area I wanted to cover today is in exploring design thinking methodology. For those that may not be familiar with it, I've put a visual up here where you start with empathy, you go into theming and developing clearly articulated problem statements, which you can then ideate on. And once you've surfaced the best ideas, you prototype and continue to iterate. And the concept is really grounded in understanding your customers' needs. So we had an example of one of our clients that went through and they had their executive team wanted to go and shadow the field sales staff. So what they did was they used our platform to capture their observations as they were in the field. Then they themed them into a variety of discrete challenge problem statements, which they then launched as ideation challenges. And then they continued to use the platform to prototype and capture learnings as they iterated on those ideas. So it was a very interesting concept, and we've now been able to apply it as a more generic design thinking methodology. So again, Spigit can help. We can share the design thinking methodology with you. We can facilitate a workshop to get this started, or you're always have access to us as consultants that can help you work this out so you can handle it on your own. So in summary, to apply HIT to your ideation program and try to avoid going stale or getting bored by infusing creativity, you can try new platforms, you can conduct inspirational workshops, or you can explore our design thinking methodology. Now I'd like to turn it over to Doug Williams, who will talk about diversifying within the platform.
Thank you, Maggie. Hi, everybody. This is Doug. Moving again further to the east, I'm located in the Boston area and work with a lot of our East Coast clients on their strategic initiatives. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about diversification of your ideation programs. In keeping with our fitness theme, it's pretty commonly understood that diversifying your exercise regimen is beneficial to your overall health. Even those individuals who are really active in one particular area are actually doing themselves a bit of a disservice by focusing on only that one thing. I think a good example is running. There are a lot of runners out there. I'm sure some of you on the phone are as well. You may go out, you may run 3, 4, 5 times a week, maybe even more. You rack up the miles, you may jump in a couple of races, maybe a 5K, 10K, maybe even a half marathon or a full marathon. You get a great cardio workout running. You're using your legs, certain muscles in the quads and the calves. Not even a bad core workout, really, if you're running quickly. But if you were to ask any of those dedicated runners to jump on a bike or take a spin class, they will quickly realize that there are muscles in the same legs that have been carrying them all those miles that are very underutilized in running as compared to biking. They're very critical in biking. So I think that's just a good analysis or analogy for how we can apply this in ideation as well. But think about the 3 outcomes for engaging in a variety of physical activities. First, strengthening different parts of your body really helps you build up in areas where you're deficient, and it improves that overall health of your system. Second, it creates renewed interest in exercising. And third, it breaks out of this fatigue, this mental fatigue of repetitive behaviors. So now let's transition over to the ideation program and think about how diversification can help here. You pretty quickly realize that the same principles can apply. We see a lot of customers who are very adept at running time-bound challenges, or maybe they really focus on always-on challenges, and they've got these methodologies and processes down pat. That's all very good. But just like with exercising, diversifying that ideation regimen can help improve the overall health of your program. So there are 3 kind of areas to think about here: targeting and strengthening different aspects of your program that you might not be as strong at as you could be. So you might be looking at ways to improve collaboration activities, or do more prioritization, or perhaps focus a little bit more on idea development, or maybe it's about engagement. There are different types of challenges that you can engage in that will focus on those different kinds of activities, just like cycling uses the same legs on your body as running, but it hits different muscles in a different way. Second point is it can breathe new life into your attitude about ideation. If you're the program manager and you're tasked with running this program, you might find yourself in a bit of a rut, and we do the same things over and over again. So now's the time to think about getting uncomfortable, try something new, and maybe energize yourself and your job. And then third, it can help avoid crowd fatigue from doing the same old behaviors that they've been asked to do over and over again. So diversifying your use of Spigit can help you with all these things. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here. First off is the concept of a live challenge and how that can spark collaboration. So I recently had the experience of working with a large utility customer of ours to facilitate a live challenge. We did this at a 2-day offsite for about 250 operational excellence leaders. And they were really focusing on collaboration as the outcome for this exercise. So we had team-based activities designed, and they had their seating chart arranged so that people were sitting in cross-functional groups. So you weren't just with your buddies from the same BU. We used a single iPad as the point of entry, and so that forced people out of their chairs and into more conversation around generating ideas and evaluating other ideas. This was a super successful event for them. From an ideation standpoint alone, they generated 150 ideas in about 20 minutes. But really, it was a very engaging process. They spent about 75 minutes on the first afternoon doing a variety of stages and activities in Spigit, and then followed up the next day with a pitch session by 5 of the teams, ultimately deciding on a winner. So this was a clear highlight of the 2-day event for this group, and really allowed them to experience Spigit in a different way and focus on collaboration. On the next slide, we think about pairwise. So prioritization is a key activity across the business, not just within a challenge. I imagine a lot of you are very familiar with pairwise from its as a phase inside of a time-bound challenge. But it can be used to prioritize any set of ideas with groups large or small at any given moment. So think about how you might be able to implement a pairwise only challenge. We've seen this done in a variety of ways. One might be in a senior leadership meeting where they're going to have an offsite and talk about strategic objectives for, say, 2018. So they may have a short list that's already been generated. Maybe they've used Spigit to actually generate those ideas. And they take those ideas into a pairwise only activity at the offsite. So people are interacting in the room for 5 or 10 minutes, doing the prioritization exercise, and then they immediately have an outcome that can be the fodder for the rest of the conversation for the session. So we've also seen it used in less formal ways. HR has used it to generate the crowd's input around prioritizing values for corporate values if they're trying to rework those. So they may have come up with a set of 10 or 15 values and they want to give the crowd a voice. So pairwise activity is a great way of doing that. I'm sure you all can think of different ways that your company could potentially use pairwise. Next concept is a Shark Tank. So this is kind of building on what Bill was talking about around idea development. It's basically a pitch session that comes at the end of the challenge. We're really seeing this happen more and more, even in smaller challenges. The picture you see is taken at an event that happened this fall. We're working with a large CPG, and they had a company-wide type challenge that went to about 6,000 employees that culminated in this Shark Tank event. So it accomplished 2 key goals. One was putting a little bit more meat on the bones for the finalist entries. There were 4 ideas that were advanced to the Shark Tank, and they spent several weeks building up those ideas, and it allowed them to provide a more robust picture to the sponsors for what they wanted to do next. But it was also very engaging. They allowed the entire crowd to participate as audience members, either in person at headquarters or through a live stream of the event to all their global locations. And then the last example here today is around awards and recognition. So we work with a pharma company here on the East Coast, but a global representation to run, I think we're up to 8 or 9 different awards programs for them. So I'm sure many companies, for those of you on the phone, you probably have some kind of recognition or awards, whether it's around innovation or other objectives within the business. The process of administering and evaluating those nominations can be very tedious. So we've found Spigit to be a very effective tool for this, where instead of submitting ideas, you're submitting nominations. And instead of going through maybe a crowd review process, it's really focused on expert review. There could be 1 or 2 rounds of that, but it's a very efficient way of gathering those nominations and allowing the leadership team to use consistent evaluation criteria and quickly identifying winners that can be then communicated back to the crowd. So in closing, just like to wrap up, any of us, your account managers, your customer success leaders, some of the strategy team that you've heard from today, we're all very adept at talking through these potential use cases with you. So if anything's piqued your interest, we'd encourage you to pick up the phone. There's plenty of other use cases we didn't even get a chance to talk about. And we also encourage creativity here. We certainly haven't thought of all potential uses of Spigit. And so encourage you to think creatively about how you can make the most of your platform in a new configuration. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to my friend and colleague, Doug Collins. He's actually going to be continuing on the diversification theme by taking it up a level and talk about what we call solutions.
Well, thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug Williams. And now for something completely different. So, hello, my name is Doug Collins. I serve as the Chief Solutions Architect at Spigit, and I am coming to you from Cincinnati, Ohio, the Queen City. So the Chief Solutions Architect role is a new one for the company. By way of introduction, I spend time with clients, people such as yourselves, to understand their goals for the business above and beyond their immediate use for the Spigit software, your needs, your jobs to be done. With these insights I gained from discovery, I determined whether and how Spigit might be of use. These determinations then influence our go-to-market plans. And so outputs from solutions, outputs that you can put your hands on, include concepts of operations, reference architectures, and use cases. And then to clarify, because you have heard from several people on the call, solutions are different from services. That is, from the presentations that you just heard from Danny, Maggie, Bill and Doug, for example, through services, we offer bespoke consultancy, very practical help for your innovation program, which you can hire by the day or by the project by purchasing service credits. Solutions, by comparison, may or may not include services. That choice is at your discretion, as it is for your core innovation practice today. That is, there's no compulsory charge for you to make use of solutions beyond, of course, having enough licenses of the Spigit software. So with that, I would like to cover two topics with you today. First, what have I learned to date about your business practices, about the practices of our clientele? Do we have a point of reference, a concept of operations at large? What do I see? And I'll gauge with you on a high level on that topic at present. And then second, given this learning, what solutions are we developing in response? What are we doing to deliver value to you? How might we be of greatest use to you? So we don't have a lot of time. If anything catches your interest, just to reiterate what others have said, then please do contact your customer success leader. And in the case of solutions, this individual, your go-to person, can arrange time for us to dig into this a little bit more deeply. So first, let's start with advancing the cultures. What have I learned through my discovery? What I'll say is that every organization, and in particular every large organization, seeks various beneficial cultural attributes. They want a culture of innovation, but they want to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. They want a culture of quality. They seek a culture of sustainability. They seek a culture of safety. We have some clients in the public utility market where they actually started with us and wanting to foment a culture of safety. And how might we innovate relative to developing, supporting a safer workplace? These cultural attributes are very near and dear to the hearts of our clients. And they affect these cultural attributes by working against one or more of the critical value streams that every business supports in one way or another. Product development, production manufacturing. Everyone makes something of some sort that they bring to market. Supply chain management. We all have suppliers. Customer engagement, a hot topic these days. And then enterprise enablement. How are we allowing for the learning and growth of our associates, for example? And what I have found, my epiphany, if you will, is that many organizations these days are embracing one or more enabling practices to make this a reality within their organization. That is, to have these multiple cultural attributes going on at the same time against one or more value streams. Then the question is, well, how? How exactly do we achieve that? And so what I see and what I see more of going forward is using these enabling practices in more transformative ways, increasingly transformative ways, whether it's design thinking, lean thinking, customer journey mapping, CX professional, agile is big these days, the business model canvas, the world of Eric Ries, Alex Osterwalder, Steve Blank and company, and other forms of empathetic, in the client's shoes, outcome-driven, problem-solving type practices. Probably quite a few more that I've not listed here. And where Spigit comes in, and for those clients who've been with us for a while, is every single one of these enabling practices is founded on having a culture of inquiry. Meaning, if you as an organization are not good at asking questions of yourselves and ultimately of your end users, none of these practices are going to yield the benefits that you were hoping they would, because the organization is not asking the right questions or is uncomfortable going for the jugular and asking certain questions. And that is our bread and butter through the software that we offer, through the consultative support that we offer, the world of Danny and Bill and Doug and Maggie. That's our bread and butter. And if we can help you there, then stakeholder outcomes such as an enhanced customer experience, an improved associate experience, more compelling delivery on the brand promise becomes possible, and then those financial outcomes that we all seek, that we're all ultimately judged upon, profitability, leverage, inventory turns, depending on your type of business, those all become possible. And I think that's what we're all after. That's certainly what every large organization these days is after in the digital age, where change seems to be accelerating with each passing day. So that's, by way of first line of inquiry, this is kind of the model I've come up with from working with our clients and seeing what they're after, and then by extension, what role might Spigit play in creating something wonderful and transformative together with you guys. Next slide, please. Thank you. So that's the high level perspective. Then, if we go down to the next level of detail, you might be saying, well, Doug, that was nice, but what does that mean for me exactly? How can I sink my teeth into that in some meaningful, tangible way? And this speaks to the enabling practices and scenarios that we support with solutions. And the first thing I want to say is we've really kind of skinnied it down to 4 focus areas: aspects of continuous improvement, aspects of customer engagement, aspects of associate engagement, aspects of product development. And you can roll each discrete solution, whether it's a practice or a scenario, under one of these 4 categories without a lot of awkwardness in the process. And so in the continuous improvement side, or on the continuous improvement side, if, for example, you have someone down the hall who's running the lean practice, they're managing the lean program office, the head of operational excellence, well, guess what? We have, and thus by extension you have, something compelling to talk to about with them. How might we help them with the lean practice? How might we identify the high-value problems to solve, then engage more people in solving them, as opposed to running a value stream mapping exercise in a conference room with 10 people and ordering lunch as needed. Same with customer engagement, the CX practice. Whereas the lean practice focuses inquiry around the value stream map, the CX practice around customer experience focuses inquiry around the customer journey map. Very popular way of visualizing the customer experience these days. But what is the purpose of a customer journey map? The customer journey map allows us to identify and pursue the most compelling questions around how might we improve the customer's journey. Otherwise, what's the point? Associate engagement, I think Doug Williams, my namesake, referenced one example, the employee recognition scenario, but we also have, for example, the internal communication scenario. So some of our clients are coming to us and saying, well, for years we used to email a PDF with the company newsletter out. Who knows who actually read it, and if they read it, which articles resonated with them? What if we treated each article as an idea? And we use Spigit as a way to structure that collaboration, that inquiry around these articles, so they're not static objects, but rather points of discussion and further collaboration. And then lastly, product development. The Agile practice is huge these days. A lot of organizations are embracing Agile, not only to get them beyond the traditional waterfall process that had defined product development historically, but also as a means of transformation. Because for those folks on the phone who had some experience, exposure with Agile, one of the critical elements is empathy, putting yourselves in the shoes of the end user to the point of having the end user there in the room with you, either directly or by proxy. And so you're wanting to develop a series of inquiries for those users. And we've found clients that have used Spigit productively in the context of the Agile practice. Same with the design thinking practice. So my closing note for you is if the discovery and the associated solutions look interesting, that is, you would like to dive more deeply with me on them, then please do get a hold of your customer success leader. These conversations about the business are by their nature, handled one-on-one. And to that end, I look forward to engaging with you. And now over to Paul Brook.
That's terrific, Doug, and thanks to the team for sharing some great examples and great insights for us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever in the world you might find yourself. We've got a few minutes before we wrap here, and we did have a couple of questions that have been logged by chat. If you have a question and you haven't asked it yet, please put that into the chat channel, and we'll address it here. Now, Maggie, this was asked in your session, but I think it's a general question across the board in terms of these additional features, part of the platform and part of the existing customer's license. So I'll start off in talking just about that in general. Maybe pivot to you about the about the services aspects of helping customers get these capabilities up and running. So all of the features you've seen are part of our standard platform, and there's no additional license fee to enable these features. But as we've sort of reviewed, some of these will require some setups, some consulting, some advisory, and some guidance. And to that end, that's Maggie, where the services and strategy team come in to help assist our customers. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't highlight specifically, but we do have technical account managers on staff that in some cases our clients like to outsource these types of things, the configuration to them. That's always available to you as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Maggie. And we'll just go around the horn here. A question for you, Doug Williams, around are there any do's or don'ts around award recognition? I know you gave a couple of examples there, and interesting to get your insight on that.
Sure. Try to keep it brief here. I think for the one group that we've been working with most consistently here over the last, I'd say now 2 to 3 years, doing different kinds of award programs, we've seen a variety of experiments taking place. So I described a more, I guess, streamlined approach of receiving nominations and then having the leadership team or whoever might comprise the decision makers using the expert review functionality to decide on winners. But we've also seen some more crowdsourcing capabilities built into this. So allowing the nominations to be more public and allowing the crowd to actually take a part, to play a role in reviewing. This customer actually decided to pivot in this direction because the crowd voiced their interest in doing this. So we've talked to some of the other groups about the potential for them to allow the crowd to play that role in their more siloed awards programs. And quite naturally, there's a little bit of hesitation at first because they are concerned about changing the way they've done things in the past. So the first change is, let's use Spigit, let's see how that goes. And then they're thinking about how we might get the crowd more involved. But one key learning for this particular group was sometimes these awards are very sophisticated in nature. And that's really going to drive that decision. If this is something that is somewhat accessible to a broader group of individuals within the organization, then by all means, I think the crowd channel would work well. But where it requires more specialized expertise to understand a project that's up for an award, that is where the crowd may not have the ability to provide that experience. And we heard this from some very senior people within these groups saying that they personally didn't have the wherewithal to evaluate some of the nominations, and they really didn't understand that was going to be necessary. So that was a key learning.
Got it. Terrific. Thank you, Doug. See a question. I'll throw this to Bill Trutner, and it's a bit of an open-ended one, but hopefully you can provide a succinct answer. What does a good challenge question look like? And I know we've heard this from many customers over the years, so would love to get your thoughts on that, Bill.
It is a great one. You know, our standard format is how might we make a change by doing something, and the form is just that simple. One thing to think about with challenge questions that's a useful model is divergent and convergent. Divergent questions are more open-ended and are generating basically letting any type of ideas flow in. The trade-off with divergent questions is you're going to need to do more work to get down to the ones you want to take action on. Convergent questions are more focused and targeted, and maybe more appropriate for problem solving, for example, as opposed to coming up with new concepts. Hope that helps a bit.
Yep, that's terrific, Bill. And Doug Collins, not to put you on the spot, but I believe you wrote a little book on how to write a good question, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right, and I think we may still have a few copies lying around the office, so we'll see if we can't get that out to folks who attended the call. So we'll take that as a action. Danny Flint, for you, a question around the deployment portal and the sort of nomination request piece that you reviewed is. Are there, in terms of the intake form, is there a specific set of questions that you would recommend asking?
Sure, that's a good question, Paul. I think what would be most important in my eyes is you are ceding somewhat the suggestion process to your audience, but you need to remember that you, as the Spigit program owner, that core team, still own and control your program brand. And so I'd be very clear with asking a question first and foremost about the outcomes sought, so that you can be sure those generally align to your program kind of goals. But at the same time, I would also be very clear to ask to ensure that there's business sponsorship and that there's a plan to actually follow up and a commitment to follow up on the ideas submitted via any challenge launched. The last thing you want to do in kind of allowing others to launch challenges is have somebody launch something that doesn't get executed upon or followed through on, which could then in turn damage your brand. So I would focus there initially. Kind of a second point, I think you can ask about audience size, topic and question, and timing, and all those just around giving you some options to diversify your challenge pipeline so that you can be offering up some variability to your organization and your audience. So I would start there. One note to keep in mind, just remember that the folks often submitting these requests are not experts in crowdsourcing and innovation and ideation. So I would be prepared to do a bit of consulting and just recommendations back to make sure that you're polishing them up based on your core team's experience.
Terrific. Thanks, Danny. And I think we've got time to squeeze in one more question/comment, and I think this one we may need to follow up offline because it's a real meaty question, but I did want to honor the request here. So one of our customers is concerned that allowing the crowd to nominate ideas will be muddled by social connections or folks supporting those ideas for people they like more than the folks that they don't like. Now we've got a number of ways that we guard against herd behavior that is built into our platform through our patented algorithms. But Maggie, maybe a 30-second just thought on how we can ensure good crowd participation and a balanced crowd participation, and then we can take this one offline because I know there is a meatier answer there for this as well.
Sure. I mean, I would probably, my gut tells me to point to pairwise first. Our pairwise algorithm allows you can actually use it at any point. We have some clients that try to use it earlier on in the process because what it does is it allows a fair number of eyeballs to see all the ideas. And for some folks that have very large crowds or lots of ideas, this could be a great way to make sure everyone is seeing as many ideas as possible. And then, of course, it serves up the ideas more randomly versus maybe you trying to search out your friends or peers or whatnot. So that's kind of what comes to mind when I think about broad participation.
Terrific. And Hannah, let's make sure that we set up a follow-up call because I know there's more to discuss on that one. I do want to be cognizant of time. We've just tipped over the top of the hour. I wanted to thank all of our customers for joining today, the strategy team and Doug Collins for presenting. We have recorded this session and we'll be sharing it with our customer base here in the next couple of weeks. If you do have any additional questions, again, please feel to reach out to anyone here on the call or to your customer success leader. Otherwise, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to join us today and have a wonderful rest of the day wherever in the world you are. So thanks again for attending, and we'll be talking to you shortly, I am sure. So thanks ever so much.